Thank you for having me here.
It's great to have you here. So I'd love to just find out when you were a member of YEBN and what you did while you were part of the network, and kind of what you think that you gained from that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, YEBN I'm very fond of it. Of course, it was a great experience that was defining in my, let's say, early years as a young scientist. And I started together with this group of people from all over Europe, the network, when we organized this first event that, in Bertinoro, is this castle in not far from Bologna, the university where I was back then. Mm-hmm. And we invited other groups of other organizations or institutions of young scientists and students across Europe. Back then, there was Germany, there was France, and Switzerland. And so we joined all together. I don't remember how many people we were there, something like probably 40 or something, with all the different delegations. And we had this 3-day long meeting to get together and decide how can we make a difference, an impact, and create a network. How do we call it? We had no idea back then, right? But also we invited some of the stakeholders that we thought were really relevant, and they joined. They actually very excitingly decided to join, such as the president of the European Federation of Biotechnology, officers from the European Commissions, and so on and so forth. So we had a very interesting group of advisors that joined. So it was very exciting days, and that was the beginning. And we ended up with this document that we all sign, and I still have it in my safe. It's closed there. That was the foundation, and was the beginning of this fantastic adventure. Right, we were incredibly active. So I joined as a representative of the Italian organization. We have 2 organizations back then: the Italian. The AMBI, Associations of National Italian Biotechnologies, and the network of the students, the delegates from the different universities, that we both founded those organizations like a few years before. Back then, biotechnology was something new as a degree in Italy, and also new emerging in Europe as well. So we were finding the same situation across our peers in other European countries. So I joined as an executive board for a first couple of years. The first year was the representative of the Swiss organization, and then we had the German representative, and I was then the chairman for 2 years. And during this time, we grew, we expanded, other countries joined, like we did in Poland, and every year we did this annual meetings in different countries, and more people joined, and it was really exciting. We were meeting almost, if not every month, every couple of months across Europe in different locations. And so everybody was organizing and finding sponsors and helps from the universities or institutions. And was very active. So we ended up joining the European Federation of Biotechnology, the EFB. Yeah. And yeah, we remember we were the first getting approved and granted by the European Commission under the 6th framework program, I think back then, in a project called BioPop. We were like, was almost a social experiment of science, social science experiment, or we were like bringing people into tents in the squares of Europe, where we had like social scientists also studying the impact of how young scientists could communicate to the people. We developed projects and supporting project developments and startups. Anyway, what did I learn from that? A lot, right? I mean, I'm still today in my current job and I can tell you a bit more about myself if you want in a second, but lots of skills that I found useful: networking, leadership, management, communication, international interactions, and all skills that I found extremely valuable as I moved forward my own career.
Wow, sounds amazing. At the moment, I'm just doing a master's, and I've interviewed a few people, and I love to hear what people gain from it, because everyone says similar sort of things, and I'm just feeling so positive about the kind of experiences that I should hopefully gain from this. So it'd be great to kind of find out what your career path looked like after you left YEBN, and about your current role now.
For sure. I'd say I'm certainly a scientist first. That was always and so so after Bologna, after starting YEBN, I moved to Padua. I always needed to do my PhD. But after that, and that's where was my last year at the YEBN and the EFB, where I also served for 2 years in the executive board while being the chairman at the YEBN. I then left Europe and I came here to US. So I came to do a postdoc at Stanford University. And after that, I had a chance to stay. So I directed my own research group for several years, working on regenerative medicine and aging. But in parallel, I always had a little bit also this entrepreneurial hat, right? So when I was in Padua, actually towards the end of my let's say YEBN tenure, I started a company there, a startup, running a business plan competition called Start Cup that eventually we won. And so we started a company there that is still up and running. But then when I moved to US, of course, I kind of moved forward on other things. But also here, I started 2 other companies in the regenerative medicine and rejuvenative medicine space. One is called Rubedo Life Sciences, where I'm currently the CEO, and I'm working full-time. Still have my academic affiliation, but my job shifted from academia to industry. And another company called Turn Biotechnologies. And one is focusing on developing small molecules to target aging process to treat age-related disease. In particular, we're doing senolytics, engineered compounds that are very selectively, they can activate in senescent cells to treat age-related diseases, as well as targeting similarly certain cancer cells or certain stem cells, again, in the context of chronic age-related conditions. The other company, Turn Bio, where I served initially as a chief scientific officer. Now I'm one of the board of director members, an advisor, but is developing an RNA-based reprogramming strategies to rejuvenate cellular functions, and again, to treat age-related diseases. Different clinical indications, different approaches. But so right now, I'm more focused on this drug development path. I've always been doing translational science. My goal was really making something out of my science that can help and benefit everybody else. So not just advancing knowledge, but really try to make something that can cure people. And that's something that you don't do in academia. At some point, you need to move out, and it's a whole different adventure. And that's where I am at right now.
Wow, that's such an interesting career path that you had. It sounds like you've been very successful. I think something I'd love to personally know is, when you kind of made the step from academia to industry, what kind of challenges do you think that you faced in the 2 different environments, and how do you feel that they kind of conflict or have similarities?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it depends which role you have when you transition from academia to industry, because you can be a bench scientist and your life might not change that much, especially if you move into a company that does lots of R&D. Or you can move more into business development as well, or or completely different areas, regulatory process as opposed to communication strategies. And so you need definitely a transition, but you learn as you move into the company in progressing from one role to the other. I found that the probably hardest step sometimes is to move from academia to industry, but once you are in industry, it's easier to grow in different directions, right? I think the key is to find the right team of the right people and you want to work with, because it will be incredibly important and useful of how they will kind of mentor you in your career. And there is another misconception that I think is changing now, but at least it was until fairly recent, is that like the science in academia is the good one, the science in the industry is like, oh, it's trying to make money. And it's absolutely not the point. You know, if you talk with people that not just started a company, you know, they're very driven in that sense, but they maybe join companies to do more developmental work or science. They're driven by making a difference, making an impact, or feeling that, you know, you need to have a clear goal, a clear direction. And so the idea of developing a product or a medicine in this context out of science is a personal drive. Many people do that not because of the financial interest, but really because of the impact that you could have. And some people are frustrated with the idea that you may just generate value and knowledge that can land nowhere, and sometimes can be extremely valuable. And simple academia is not the place to take science to the next level, which requires lots of resources and lots of work, and it's really difficult to make new medicine. Yeah. Otherwise, we would have already cured everything.
Everything.
It's extremely difficult. There are so many variables and things to take into account, but it's also very exciting. And typically, people are driven by this idea of helping others, of making medicine or making a science that can make a difference. So I would keep the open mind and really ask yourself, what kind of science do you like and which direction do you want to take in your career?
Wow, interesting. And you mentioned that you've opened your own companies and started your companies. Obviously, that's a massive step for anyone. I guess it'd be great to find out maybe just the challenges or the benefits that you saw and how you kind of found transitioning from sort of working under someone to having your own company.
Okay, well, let's do a step back. And I certainly found my experience at YEBN very valuable in that sense and helping me also in this transition. You know, because during, you know, as a student or a graduate student, undergrad and then grad, back then, you know, by being not just on the bench, but being exposed to other things, like interacting with people that are from industry, even leaders, you know, VP or CEOs of companies, big pharmas back then, you know, and so understanding what that means and how that works and what kind of communication or logic that helped me in like thinking ahead a little bit. But certainly then that's different doing it later. And the key for me was finding the right team. So my co-founders, I have people that are, or people who joined the company after we started are very experienced, navigated drug hunters from big pharma, from biotech, people with, you know, 30, 35 years of experience in drug discovery, in starting a company, in entrepreneurship. So that helps a lot. You need a mentor, no matter where you are. You know, you can't reinvent things, and there is so much you can do. So you definitely need a strong team to do those things. And your board, your syndicate, investors and partners, strategic partners are critical. Right? you need to fill the gaps, you need to learn, and you need others that can bring that expertise that you don't have, because nobody knows everything. So yeah, it's critical to choose wisely.
Yeah.
Wouldn't jump into starting a company blindly because it's exciting.
Yeah.
Because executing an idea that's the key. There are so many good ideas, and most of them fails, often for a lack of experience, or the lack of the right team, or the right moment or time or partners, despite the validity of the science. So yeah, I think what I learned and helped me so far is, and YEBN helping a lot in choosing the right people to work with. Right? So those skills, these social, interpersonal skills, learning with people from a diversity, different cultures, different mindset, different experience, it's key and helps you in choosing wisely who you want to work with.
Yeah, interesting. So what skills would you say are kind of in your current role, what would you say are the kind of like top 3 skills that you think are essential for people that kind of want to follow a similar career path to kind of to being successful?
Well, as a CEO, you need, first of all, is a science-based company, and I come from more science and academic, as there are CEOs that may come from business, and as an MBA, you may be coming from consulting or big pharma. And so that defines the type of executive you could be. I think the strength of being a scientist is that you understand what you're doing, and you can understand what your team is doing, and so steering directions of how things are. So being a strong scientist is a key if you want to pursue this career at some point. And so know very well your science and try to establish yourself as fast as you can before doing this move. It's very important. So choosing the right lab where to go to train and try to do the very strong work and publishing well, and so establishing in that sense yourself as a scientist, I think, is important if you want to do a science-driven company. The second is certainly having the capacity to integrate information at many levels and delegate. So you need to maintain the big picture and combine and prioritize properly. Be mindful about what's the time, and what can be relevant now, what should wait, and say no. It's very important to learn to say no, and when to say yes in timing. There are something that could be very important, but in a month or in 6 months from now, and you need that capacity to try to predict and foresee in the future. And you can do this by yourself, but it's by, again, integrating information. So be a good communicator, networking well, and being able to attract strong, valid partners and team. When investors, sophisticated investors, look in your idea, most of the time, first they look at who you are and who is your team, who you're attracting, before looking, okay, let's see how solid is this scientific idea, because you might not be able to execute. And so that's why generally the executive team is the key, because they are the ones who needs to build the whole infrastructure. And depends of your skills and your credibility and reputation, that will make a big difference, right? That's why sometimes there are certain very successful people with a proven track record with pretty much zero. They are able to build fantastic companies and then execute, but they already proved that. So they know how to get there. And certainly, so if you don't have that experience, you first need to prove that you are capable of. And so you need to start with a very strong foundation, strong science, and as much as you can, the best team that you can put together. And then prove, knowing that your risk of failure is higher because you don't have that experience. So you know, starting from not that angle, but coming from academia, you want to have those, you know, science, good communication, being a good diplomat, and you know, being a good manager. Those are things that are very important.
I guess it's just a balance of having kind of good science and being a business person, and just being able to balance the two of those in a happy equilibrium. I'm sure that's not an easy task.
It's not easy, and balancing is hard. And so when you start, you know, it's all is shiny and beautiful, but then you realize that complexity can be overwhelming. And yeah, so managing yourself is also important, right? You know, risk of burning out is very high. So if someone, I think, can balance yourself, and it's a marathon, so pacing yourself and being able to hold on and try to do the right step at the right time, instead of, you know, going too fast and burning and then blowing everything out, it's super important. And that's also another key aspect, is how good you are in managing also you and not just others, because that will make a difference in the long run.
Yeah. What would your kind of top tips be for people to manage yourself? What would you say? Because obviously that's something that people are always kind of developing on, and people are always trying to improve themselves. So it'd be great to just hear what you think would be the best, or the sort of the top tips you'd give to current members of YEBN as to kind of how to hold yourself.
First of all, I mean, there are different personalities, right? So I don't think there is a recipe. I think the first is, you know yourself well. And I think that I found myself, for example, mindfulness is helpful, like learning on yourself and developing really on different practice. There are several, but like certainly working on mindfulness, it's good. So introspection and maturing, seeing what are your limits, what are the things that you need to overcome, because the problems, they all show up. And that takes time. You know, some people are faster than others, but that also tells you, you should ask yourself, am I ready for this? You know, maybe I need another year, maybe I need another 10 years, because then that will make a difference between being successful or not. So don't rush it. But also socially, I think it helps a lot by interacting with others and learn from others. And that kind of gives a feedback of how good you are in building strong relationships, because, you know, sometimes those things are coming out. So all social activities are valuable, you know, and so YEBN helps a lot into that, working with others in developing projects and communication that is around what you like to do, about your science, but is beyond that, right? And this is certainly a place where you can explore and develop skills that can help later.
Okay. Wow, interesting. I guess the last question I have would be just with regards to kind of what you kind of hope to achieve in the next 5 years. Obviously, it's clear you've had a very successful time since you left YEBN, and just kind of hear maybe a bit about what your vision is for the future for your company.
Yes. So it's hard to predict in that sense. Of course, the expectation and the effort is, for example, at Rubedo Life Sciences, is to make new drugs. So that's the idea. So the expectation is that we will move from an early discovery process. We are now in a kind of lead optimization stage. So we are compounds that we made. So we design and discover new things and design them. Again, the approach is sophisticated. With the team is very diversified. Our CTO comes from Facebook, for example, very sophisticated, one of the lead software engineers that was there, and with zero experience in biology, but of course with a team of bioinformaticians and chemoinformaticians, but he built a very sophisticated drug discovery platform. that was exciting, and it's still ongoing, but it's exciting to see completely things out of the box driving the drug discovery. So I want to see this growing in a certain direction, but it's also exciting to see that from an idea to now compounds, we are in a preclinical stage, and moving this not to the next level. So what is called IND enabling studies. So we're doing work that are required by in US by the FDA, the organization that allows you to run clinical trials and eventually approve the drug. So I could see how in the next 5 years, hopefully we will be in an advanced clinical stage. And so seeing for at least a first indication, clinical indication, seeing a first drug that might come to the finish line. And that's the best reward. You see, you can now have something that can make a difference and help people in unmet needs, in diseases that are incurable. And that would be my very first goal, and see the company growing to the next stage and as more programs develop. Now, beyond that, it's hard to say. There are many, many possibilities where the company can go, and myself, where I could go. So we'll see. I have ideas, but it's too early to share.
Well, thank you very much for sort of answering all my questions, and I'm sure everybody else that watches from the YEBN will find it as interesting